Sure, here's a complete story titled The Midnight Train That Never Stops and Passengers Who Never Leave. In the quiet town of Hollow Creek, the midnight hour was never quite the same. At exactly 12, a distant rumble would grow louder, echoing through the empty streets. Then, the midnight train would roar past, a long, shadowy locomotive with flickering lights, speeding through without stopping. No one ever saw it pull into the station. It was said the train carried passengers who had boarded long ago and never left. They weren't just traveling, they were trapped, caught between places and times, forever riding a track that never ended. One foggy night, a restless boy named Jonah decided to uncover the truth. He waited alone on the cold platform, clutching his coat tight against the chill. When the train thundered by, he dashed forward and leapt onto a rear carriage just as it disappeared into the darkness. Inside, the air was thick with silence. Rows of passengers sat motionless, faces pale and eyes empty, staring out the windows into the night that never changed. Jonah tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat, swallowed by an eerie stillness. Days, or maybe years, has passed. Though time made no sense aboard the train, Jonah noticed the other passengers were ghosts of memories: a woman clutching a locket, a man staring at a faded photograph, children playing silently in their seats. Each was caught in a loop of regret, unable to leave behind what held them bound. At last, Jonah found an old conductor, who whispered, "This train never stops because its passengers fear the destination more than the journey. To leave, one must face what they left behind." Gathering courage, Jonah closed his eyes and remembered his own pain, a lost friendship, words never spoken, a goodbye he wished he could take back. With a deep breath, he let go of the past's grip. As dawn's first light touched the windows, the train slowed and, for the first time, stopped at a quiet station. The doors opened wide, and Jonah stepped off, feeling the warmth of a new day. Behind him, the midnight train faded into mist, carrying its remaining passengers on, forever traveling, forever lost. Would you like me to write it in a particular style or expand on certain parts? Here's the next part, continuing the story. Jonah stood on the platform, watching the midnight train disappear into the mist, its faint whistle lingering in the morning air. He felt lighter, as if the weight he had carried for so long was finally lifted. But the town of Hollow Creek had changed. The people who had once whispered about the ghostly train now spoke of Jonah's strange disappearance and sudden return. Some said he had been lost to the train's curse forever, while others believed he had escaped a fate worse than death. Days later, Jonah noticed something unsettling. Those same passengers he had seen aboard the train began appearing in the town, translucent figures, drifting silently through streets and alleys. They were the lost souls who had never left, now trapped between the world of the living and the endless journey of the train. Jonah realized the midnight train wasn't just a passage. It was a limbo where regrets and memories clung to souls like chains. The train might stop, but some passengers never truly left. Determined, Jonah vowed to help them find peace. He started listening to their stories, comforting the forgotten, and encouraging them to confront the past they feared. One by one, the ghosts faded, freed at last to move on. And though the midnight train still thundered through Hollow Creek at midnight, its passengers were no longer trapped in silence. Jonah had become the bridge between worlds, the one who finally helped the midnight train's lost passengers find their way home. Want me to keep going? Here's the next part of the story. As weeks passed, Jonah's life became intertwined with the mysteries of the midnight train. Each night, he would sit by the station, waiting for the spectral train to pass, hoping to hear the whispers of those still trapped. One evening, as the clock struck midnight, the train rolled in, but this time, it slowed, almost hesitating. The conductor appeared beside Jonah, his eyes filled with a strange sadness. "You've done well," the conductor said softly, "but there's one last passenger, the one who holds the train's curse." Jonah's heart raced. The conductor motioned toward a darkened carriage at the very end of the train. From its shadows, a figure emerged, tall and cloaked in twilight, eyes gleaming with a mixture of sorrow and anger. "Who are you?" Jonah asked. The figure's voice was like wind through dead leaves. "I am the keeper of regrets. I bind this train, feeding on the sorrow of those aboard. Until I am freed, the journey will never end." Jonah realized that to free the trapped souls forever, he would have to confront the keeper himself. Gathering every ounce of courage, Jonah stepped onto the train once more. The air grew heavy as the train moved through a tunnel of memories, some beautiful, others painful. Jonah faced his own fears and doubts, fighting to reach the heart of the curse. In the end, it was forgiveness that broke the spell, forgiving himself and the keeper, who was once a man consumed by regret. Jonah shattered the chains binding the passengers. As the first light of dawn bathed the train in gold, the midnight train finally came to a full stop at Hollow Creek Station. Doors opened, and the passengers stepped off, free at last. Jonah watched them disappear into the morning mist, a quiet smile on his lips. The midnight journey was over, but the lessons of the train would stay with him forever. Want to wrap it up or add an epilogue? Here's an epilogue to wrap up the story. Years later, Jonah became the town storyteller, sharing the legend of the midnight train with children gathered around crackling fires. But unlike before, his tale was no longer one of fear, it was a story of hope, courage, and the power to let go. The station where the train once roared had become a peaceful place, bathed in soft light and quiet breeze. Sometimes, on clear nights, a faint whistle could still be heard, but it no longer carried sorrow. And if you ever find yourself waiting on a lonely platform at midnight, listen closely. You might hear the echoes of a journey that taught a small town how to heal, the journey of the midnight train that never stopped, and the passengers who finally left. Would you like me to create a title page or some illustrations for this story? Here's an added twist to continue beyond the epilogue. One quiet night, long after the midnight train had vanished from Hollow Creek's skies, a faint whistle stirred the wind again, but this time, it came from nowhere, no tracks, no smoke, no train. Jonah, now older and wiser, felt a familiar chill. He stepped outside his home and saw a shimmering figure standing at the edge of town. It was the Keeper of Regrets, no longer cloaked in darkness, but glowing softly with peace. I am free, the figure said, because of you, Jonah, but the journey to forgiveness is endless. There will always be those who need a guide. With a gentle smile, the Keeper vanished into the night, leaving behind a single glowing feather. Jonah knew then his role was far from over. The midnight train may have stopped, but the echoes of its passengers lived on, in every heart wrestling with regret, waiting for someone to help them let go. And so, under the stars, Jonah prepared for new journeys, not on a train that never stops, but in the lives of those who still needed to find their way home. Want to explore that new path, or something else? Here's the next chapter exploring Jonah's new role. From that night onward, Jonah became a quiet guardian of Hollow Creek's forgotten stories. He walked the streets at twilight, listening for the sighs of restless hearts and the whispered regrets carried on the breeze. People began seeking him out, strangers haunted by memories they couldn't escape, or townsfolk weighed down by guilt and sorrow. Jonah didn't offer magic or miracles, just a patient ear and the wisdom of someone who had faced darkness and come through. One evening, a young woman appeared at his door, eyes filled with tears. I can't move on, she said, my past won't let me live. Jonah nodded gently. Then let's sit, and I'll help you tell your story. Together, they unraveled the tangled threads of pain and forgiveness, and as the night deepened, the woman's burden lifted like morning mist. Word spread quietly. Jonah was no longer just the boy who escaped the midnight train, but a beacon for those trapped in their own journeys, and though the train was gone, its lessons lived on in every soul he helped set free. Because some trains don't run on tracks, they run on the roads within our hearts, and sometimes, the greatest journey is learning to step off. Want me to write more or change the focus? Here's a continuation that deepens Jonah's journey and the mysteries he encounters. One night, as Jonah sat by the old station, a faint shimmer caught his eye. A young boy stood alone on the platform, staring into the dark woods beyond the town. His eyes held the same haunted look Jonah remembered all too well. Are you lost? Jonah asked softly. The boy nodded. I hear the train calling. It says it's coming back. Jonah felt a chill. Could the midnight train really return? Or was this something new, a different kind of journey? He reached out his hand. Come with me. You don't have to wait for a train that never stops. Together, they walked away from the platform, leaving behind the whispering tracks. Jonah knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he felt ready to face whatever came, not as a passenger, but as a guide. Because sometimes, The trains that never stop are not meant to carry us forever. They are there to teach us how to find our own way. Want to keep exploring this new story thread? Here's the next part, continuing Jonah's role as a guide. In the days that followed, more children and adults began appearing near the old station, each drawn by whispers of the midnight train's return. Some came with hope, others with fear, but all carried invisible burdens. Jonah opened his home to them, offering a safe place to share their stories. Around crackling fires and quiet evenings, the townsfolk learned to face their regrets, just as Jonah once had. Slowly, the town of Hollow Creek began to heal, not because the train stopped coming, but because its passengers found strength to walk away. One misty morning, Jonah stood at the edge of the woods with the boy who had first appeared that night. The boy smiled and took a deep breath. "I'm ready now," he said. Together, they watched as the forest light shifted, revealing a path that glowed softly, beckoning the lost toward peace. Jonah squeezed the boy's shoulder. "You're never truly lost, as long as you're willing to keep walking." As the boy stepped onto the path, Jonah felt a warmth spread through him, a promise that every journey could end with a new beginning. And somewhere, deep in the shadows beyond Hollow Creek, the midnight train's whistle faded into silence, its passengers finally free to move on. Would you like me to create an ending, or explore another angle? Here's a closing chapter to bring the story full circle. Years later, the old station stood quiet and still, its tracks slowly swallowed by wildflowers and grass. Hollow Creek had changed, no longer haunted by the echoes of a train that never stopped, but alive with the laughter and light of people who had learned to forgive. Jonah, now an elder, sat beneath the ancient oak tree by the station. Children gathered around him, eager for stories of magic and mystery. He smiled and began. "Long ago, a midnight train raced through this town, carrying passengers who never left, caught in their own regrets, but one brave boy found a way to help them let go." As Jonah spoke, a gentle breeze stirred the leaves, carrying with it a soft, distant whistle, not of sorrow, but of freedom. And though the midnight train was gone, its story lived on, a reminder that no journey is endless if you have the courage to step off. Would you like me to help turn this into a full book or add illustrations? Since the story's wrapped up nicely, here's a little extra twist to leave you thinking. As the children dispersed, a quiet figure lingered in the shadows near the oak tree. It was the glowing feather the keeper of regrets had left long ago, pulsing softly with light. Jonah looked up, sensing a presence. "Not all journeys end," a voice whispered in the wind. "Some begin anew." He smiled knowingly, ready for whatever mysteries the night might bring. Here's a fresh direction based on that mysterious feather. Months passed, and Jonah kept the glowing feather carefully tucked away in an old wooden box. One evening, as twilight deepened, the feather began to glow brighter than ever before, casting shimmering patterns on the walls. Suddenly, a portal of swirling light opened before Jonah, a gateway to another realm. From the portal stepped a young woman, eyes full of wonder and hope. "I am the keeper's successor," she said softly. "The journey of regrets continues, but with new hope. Will you help me guide those who still wander?" Jonah rose, heart steady. "I will," he said. Together, they stepped through the portal, ready to bring peace to souls far beyond Hollow Creek. Want to keep building this new world? Here's the continuation of the new story thread. Beyond the portal, Jonah found himself in a place unlike anything he had seen, a vast landscape shimmering between twilight and dawn, where lost memories drifted like leaves on a gentle breeze. The air hummed with the voices of countless souls seeking peace. The young woman, the keeper's successor, led him through this realm. "Here, we help those caught between moments, those unable to move on," she explained. "Their regrets bind them, just like the passengers on the midnight train." Together, they traveled from one flickering memory to another, gently guiding souls toward forgiveness and release. Jonah marveled at the endless compassion this place demanded, and the strength it gave him. But amid the shimmering light, a shadow stirred. A new force of doubt and fear threatened to trap these souls forever. Jonah realized their journey was far from over. This realm was a new kind of midnight train, and he was now its conductor. With resolve, Jonah tightened his grip on the glowing feather, ready to face whatever darkness came next, for the sake of every soul seeking freedom. Want me to continue? Here's the next part. The shadow grew, twisting the memories into tangled webs of fear and despair. Jonah and the Keeper's successor faced it together, their combined light pushing back against the darkness. But the shadow whispered, "You cannot save them all. Regret is endless." Jonah shook his head. "Hope is stronger." Drawing strength from the glowing feather, he reached out to the trapped souls, reminding them of their courage, their love, and their capacity to forgive. One by one, the shadows receded, and the realm brightened. Souls stepped forward, their faces peaceful, their burdens lifted. The journey was far from over, but Jonah understood now that every ending was also a beginning, and that even the longest train ride could find its final stop. Want me to keep going? Here's what happens next. With the shadow weakened, the realm began to transform. Where once there was darkness, now there were gardens of light, paths paved with shimmering hope. Souls moved freely, no longer bound by chains of regret. Jonah and the Keeper's successor walked among them, offering guidance and comfort. But deep in the distance, a faint rumble echoed, a reminder that the battle between light and shadow was never truly over. Still, Jonah felt peace. He had found his purpose, not just as a guide for Hollow Creek, but as a guardian for all who wandered between worlds. And somewhere beyond the veil, the midnight train rested at last, its passengers finally home. Would you like to explore a new story, or wrap this one up with a final reflection? Here's a final reflection to close the story beautifully. As Jonah stood at the edge of the glowing realm, he gazed back toward the world he had left behind. The memories, regrets, and hopes of countless souls had woven together into something more, a tapestry of healing and renewal. He understood now that life's journey was not about running from the past or racing toward the future, but about embracing every step, every moment, no matter how dark or uncertain. The midnight train, the passengers, the Keeper, the shadow, they were all parts of the same story, a story of courage, forgiveness, and the endless quest to find peace within. With a deep breath, Jonah stepped forward into the light, ready to guide others on their own journeys, knowing that sometimes, the greatest freedom comes from simply letting go. Would you like me to help you format this story into a book or add any other elements? Would you like me to develop this new thread or switch to something else? Got it. Here's a fresh, longer story for you. The Last Light of Emberfall. In the kingdom of Emberfall, the sun had not risen for 50 years. A thick, unyielding darkness had settled over the land, swallowing towns, forests, and rivers alike. The people lived by the pale glow of flickering lanterns and whispered legends of the Lightbringer, a chosen one who could rekindle the sun's flame. Amara, a young apprentice blacksmith, had grown up hearing the tales from her grandmother. She never believed the stories were true, but she clung to hope in the shadows. One evening, as she worked late in the forge, a strange visitor appeared, an old man cloaked in silver light, carrying a sword that shimmered like a star. "You are the Lightbringer," he said, his voice both gentle and commanding. "The time has come to awaken the sun." Amara's world shifted. She was no hero, just a girl with soot-stained hands and dreams too big for the dark. But the sword in her hand pulsed with warmth, and a fire sparked within her heart. Guided by the old man, Amara set off on a perilous journey across Emberfall, through cursed forests where shadows moved like living things, over mountains that whispered secrets of forgotten gods, and into the depths of a sunless abyss where the darkness lived. Along the way, she gathered companions: Lys, a rogue with a heart as fierce as his blades; Ilara, a healer whose songs could mend broken souls; and Torin, a knight who had sworn to protect the realm even in the darkest night. Together, they faced trials that tested their courage and their trust. They battled creatures born of shadow and despair, uncovered ancient prophecies written in the stars, and learned that the true power of light was not in magic or might, but in hope, sacrifice, and unity. At the journey's end, Amara stood before the sleeping sun, its light trapped inside a crystal prison. With the sword glowing bright, she reached out, willing the darkness to break. The sun exploded into brilliance, bathing Emberfall in golden light for the first time in decades. Flowers bloomed, rivers sparkled, and the people cheered, their world reborn. But Amara knew the light was fragile, and that darkness would always return if hope faltered. She raised her sword high and vowed to be the eternal guardian of Emberfall's dawn. Would you like me to continue this story, add more chapters, or create a different genre? Here's the next chapter continuing the last light of Emberfall. Chapter 2, Shadows Stir. The warmth of the returned sun filled the land, but peace was fragile. As Emberfall basked in the golden light, whispers of a new threat began to spread, far beyond the mountains, where the shadows still clung to forgotten places. A dark force was awakening. Amara and her companions had returned to the capital, hailed as heroes. The people celebrated, rebuilding their homes and lives with renewed vigor. Yet Amara could not shake the feeling that something watched from the edges of the light, waiting for the right moment. One night, as the city slept beneath a sky studded with stars, a chilling wind swept through the streets. The old man who had first come to Amara appeared once more, his silver cloak fluttering like a ghost. "The darkness you defeated was but a shadow of a greater evil," he warned. "The veil, the barrier between our world and the realm of night, weakens. If it breaks, creatures of endless shadow will flood Emberfall." Amara's grip tightened on the sword that still hummed with the sun's power. "What must we do?" "You must journey to the heart of the veil," he said, "and renew the ancient seals. But beware, the veil's guardians test all who seek to pass." Without hesitation, Amara called her friends to her side. Lys sharpened his blades with a grim smile. Ilara hummed a soothing melody, and Torin tightened his armor. Together, they set out once more, into a land where light and shadow blurred, ready to face the unknown. Want me to keep going with this adventure? Here's Chapter 3 for the last light of Emberfall. Chapter 3, The Veil's Guardians. The path to the heart of the veil led through the Whispering Woods, a place where the trees seemed alive, murmuring secrets to those who dared enter. The air was thick with mist, and shadows danced just beyond sight. As Amara and her companions pressed forward, the forest grew darker, the whispers louder. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the fog emerged towering figures, the veil's guardians, ancient beings woven from bark, stone, and shadow. Their eyes glowed with a fierce, otherworldly light as they blocked the path. Lys stepped forward, his twin blades gleaming, but Amara raised her hand. "We seek only passage," she said firmly, "to renew the seals and protect Emberfall." The largest guardian, its voice like grinding stone, replied, "Only those pure of heart and strong of purpose may pass. You must face a trial, confront your deepest fears." Before their eyes, illusions sprang to life. Amara saw her village consumed by darkness, her friends lost to shadows. Lys faced betrayals and doubts. Ilara's healing hands trembled, failing those she loved. Torin relived battles where he could not save his comrades. One by one, they confronted their fears together, drawing strength from their bond. Amara lifted her sword, its light cutting through the illusions. The guardians bowed, stepping aside. "You have proven worthy. The path is open." Beyond the forest lay the veil, a shimmering curtain of light and shadow, pulsing with ancient power. Amara steeled herself, knowing the hardest trials still awaited. "Want me to continue the journey?" Here's Chapter 4 of the last light of Emberfall. Chapter 4, Crossing the Veil. The shimmering veil stretched before them like a living tapestry, colors shifting, shadows twisting. As Amara reached out to touch it, a cold ripple ran through her fingertips, sending a shiver down her spine. "Once we step through," the old man's voice echoed in her mind, "there is no turning back until the seals are renewed." Taking a deep breath, Amara led her friends through the veil. The world twisted and warped around them, stars blinking out, landscapes folding into themselves, whispers echoing from unseen places. On the other side, they found themselves in a realm caught between night and dawn. The sky was a swirling canvas of twilight hues, and the air vibrated with raw magic. Before them stood the crystal spire, the source of the ancient seals, but it was cracked and bleeding darkness, tendrils of shadow leaking into the realm. Suddenly, the ground shook. From the darkness emerged a figure cloaked in swirling shadows, eyes burning with cold fire, the Shadow Warden. "You dare to mend the veil?" the warden hissed. "This darkness is eternal. Light is fleeting and weak." Amara stepped forward, sword glowing with the sun's fire. "As long as hope lives, light will never fade." A fierce battle erupted, light clashing against shadow. The companions fought bravely, their strength and unity tested to the limit. Finally, with a cry, Amara plunged the sword into the heart of the crystal spire. A burst of radiant light exploded, healing the cracks, sealing the veil once more. The Shadow Warden screamed and vanished into the shadows, defeated but not destroyed. The realm began to brighten, the veil shimmering with renewed strength. Would you like the story to continue or start wrapping up? Here's Chapter 5, moving toward the climax and resolution of the last light of Emberfall. Chapter 5, Dawn's Promise. As the light from the crystal spire spread through the twilight realm, Amara and her companions felt a profound peace settle over them. The veil's strength had been restored, but the battle had taken its toll. Wounds ached and spirits were weary. The old man appeared once more, his silver cloak shining brighter than ever. You have done what many thought impossible. The sun will rise fully in Emberfall again. Back in the kingdom, the horizon blushed with the first true dawn in decades. Golden rays spilled over hills and rivers, awakening a land long shrouded in shadow. Amara stood at the highest tower, the sword now resting by her side. She watched as children laughed and flowers bloomed beneath the sun's warm embrace. Is the darkness gone forever? Lys asked, standing beside her. Amara shook her head gently. Darkness is part of the world, as much as light. But hope, courage, and unity, they are the flame that keeps the night at bay. Torrhen smiled, sheathing his sword. Then our watch continues. Ilara's voice was soft but certain. We are the guardians of the dawn. As the sun climbed higher, casting Emberfall in brilliant light, Amara knew their journey was only beginning. But for the first time in 50 years, hope shone brighter than the darkness. And that was enough. Would you like a final epilogue or some character backstories next? Here's an epilogue to close the last light of Emberfall. Epilogue, light carried forward. Years passed, and Emberfall flourished under the ever-rising sun. The land healed, and its people rebuilt their homes, their lives, and their spirits. Songs of the Lightbringer's courage became legends passed down through generations. Amara, now a revered leader and keeper of ancient knowledge, trained a new generation, those chosen to protect the balance between light and shadow. The sword, once a symbol of burden, became a beacon of hope. One evening, beneath a sky painted with stars, Amara stood where her journey began, at the forge. She held the glowing sword, feeling its warmth pulse like a heartbeat. Light, she whispered, is not just in the sun, it's in every act of kindness, every brave choice, and every moment we choose hope. As the stars shimmered above, a new light flickered on the horizon, a reminder that even in the darkest times, the flame of courage would never be extinguished. And so, the story of Emberfall's last light lived on, carried forward by those who dared to believe. Would you like me to write character profiles? Or perhaps a short prequel? Here's a short prequel chapter to give more background to the last light of Emberfall. Prequel, the day the sun went silent. Decades before Amara's journey, Emberfall was a vibrant kingdom bathed in sunlight. The people thrived, and the land was rich and fertile. But a growing shadow loomed beneath the surface, an ancient curse born from forgotten wars and broken promises. One fateful evening, as the sun began to set, a terrible silence fell. The light dimmed, flickered, and then vanished entirely. Panic swept across the kingdom as darkness swallowed the land. The royal council gathered desperately, calling upon the greatest scholars, mages, and warriors to find a way to restore the sun. Among them was a young blacksmith's apprentice, who listened closely to every tale and prophecy. Legends spoke of the Lightbringer, a chosen soul destined to reignite the sun's flame, but no one knew who that person might be, or how to awaken them. As years passed, hope dwindled, and the kingdom adapted to the eternal night. Yet the promise of light never died completely, waiting patiently for a spark to set it free. Want me to expand more on the prequel or dive into the character backstories now?